I'm Jeff Williams. I work for the York Region District School Board. I'm an education assistant, developmental support worker. Pretty awesome. I have a few students in my class at the moment that have visual impairment, and we work with them as we would with any other student, make sure that they're grasping the curriculum or any activities that we assign them, and stepping in to assist whenever there's some barriers that they need help with. A lot of math assignments or worksheets that students might be assigned might not be as accessible as they would for other students. So having really small fonts or really small symbols that are hard to identify between, is this a division sign or a minus sign? So having those in bolder and much more visual fonts. Working with a student, we can go over the material together, and I can say out loud what the question is asking. The way that I kind of came into working with students is through supporting children with autism and other developmental disorders, and there's a lot of overlap with visual impairments, hearing impairments, like physical needs, just kind of a grab bag of anyone who needs support. And I feel like I'm capable and I have some insight or some strategies that I can support with, and I'll do my best to support. Having an understanding of the students and the students' needs, I kind of step in as advocating for their needs as well to other staff. Like if I'm working with the teacher and the teacher is assigning work that isn't as accessible or appropriate for their levels and learning needs, then advocating for them and giving examples of what those could be. For instance, we had a teacher that was using a lot of worksheets with really small print, and it was hard for the students to understand the questions and answer them properly. So I asked that they brought in bigger and more colorful work pages if they wanted to do work pages, or having some math that is applied to more life skills and community skills. So having real life applications of that math, like your grocery lists or counting change, rather than just counting teddy bears or something non-specific. Being clear with my language and asking my students what they're struggling with and what they need support with. The students I've worked with are really good at advocating for themselves as well and saying what they need and what questions they have. Listening to them, letting them take the lead on what they need help with and what they are fine to do on their own to encourage their independence. Math can be pretty dry sometimes, right? So using real life examples and applying, like if it's a student that I know really well and they have an interest in soccer, then we could do a math activity about soccer points, or like framing it in that way, and that way that they're more engaged in something that they're interested in. Using things that we can touch, we can pick up and place in different places instead of just numbers on a piece of paper. That's very helpful. Usually large objects that maybe are different shapes or different colors, so students can identify that I'm picking up a new object and I'm counting this one and then moving on to the next instead of the same material. Getting on the same page with other staff, having them find work and activities that are appropriate for the students' needs and their academic level. With something like math, it can be really discouraging if it's way too advanced or if it's way too simple. It'll become uninteresting, and then it'll be a chore to get through a math period every day. Where if it's something more fun and exciting and it's new, we try different things instead of the same questions every day, I think it'll be much more engaging from the students. Finding ways to communicate with the other instructors on how to do that. it's wonderful, you know, sometimes you're going to be figuring it out as you go and being on your toes, and sometimes you'll make mistakes, and that's okay, but it's a learning environment for everyone, the educators and the students. I worked with one teacher and I explained that we should use manipulatives and real-life skills. So she had an interest in gardening, and I thought, that's great. There are so many things like vegetables or seeds that you could use to count or use with these math lessons. And then the next day she brought in a bag of tiny strawberry seeds, which are like sesame seeds small. And she was asking my student to count each of them and then put them in another bag, and that didn't really work so well. We ended up sending a student home with a potted plant of no seeds in there, of course, because they didn't make it in, and I think he was watering this plant all summer, but it was just soil. A little unfortunate, so I think it was the right idea, but being aware of what your students' needs are and were acceptable for them. Finding something larger, like if you wanted to count pumpkin seeds, that would be better, or even like the vegetables themselves, if we're counting strawberries or sorting them, that would be a lot easier than tiny little strawberry seeds.
Hi, I'm Samuel Gorbani, and I want to talk about visually impaired and what's the challenge on. Because of a genetic problem, I got visually impaired. I have been visually impaired since 7 years old. Before I was low vision. I read Braille and I studied Braille when I have been a kid. And I went through the school, and after that I went to the Tehran Conservatory of Music for the studying performance with piano. My main instrument was piano, but I shifted to trombone because I thought maybe trombone is more orchestral, because we have low and less level trombone players and we don't have the blind trombone players. But that's something I can say, there's no limit for the people who are visually impaired. And I was famous, and I'm still famous for pushing to the limits, and I always push to the limits. So if you're asking how can you study the Braille music and stuff like that, so I learned the Braille music. There is Braille music. I can't say that blind people can do everything. It doesn't any limit to that. I did 9 months in a non-profit orchestra called Pars Wind Orchestra in Tehran. I mean, trying to go to the educated through it and improve my skills and go maybe to Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Who knows? So I really had a trouble with math before. The problem was I couldn't understand math from Braille when I have been in first grade, but I tried until I could understand it. Mostly I could deal with math and counting things, balancing the budgets, but the problem is in this inflation you cannot balance the budgets. Right? All of the problems is exam. The question in exams wasn't specialized or compatible for us. It's Math 55, which is their teaching in Harvard University for people who want to work with NSA or CIA or the US government. This is really highest level of math. This is interesting topic for me. What is in that math? For example, like algebra or the kinds of things like that. I didn't have any specific lessons, stuff like that. But I don't think the math is gonna be my favorite reasons and stuffs for the studying and stuff like that, because I'm a musician. If I know how can I count the beats, the bars, for composing the music that would be perfect? We learned in the Tehran Conservatory of Music how can we count the beats, bars. Balancing the buzzers or shapes. Usually we can do the shapes in the braille and we can deal with it, but the problem is if we want to answer a question in the exam, they're always prepared for vision, the people who have vision. I can't answer the image description of the shape or stuff like that, and usually the scribes writes a blind student cannot describe the shapes. But if it's in braille, if it's accessible with braille, probably we can do it with roulettes and kinds of stuff. The roulette is something you make dots with on the paper. It's something like a knife, but it's rolling, and you can make dots on the paper with that roulette. When you're want to make a clothes or stuff like that. For math, it's really different. For math, we should have something in braille until we can deal with it. But the technology is helping us. It's not a big deal. Kind of computers or displays. We can, for example, if we need an assignment for the people who are blind, who are reading braille, we can put everything on braille in the braille display, almost everything. Actually, in Canada, I have more facilities than Iran. Because of the kinds of compilations, we don't have that kinds of facilities. I remember in Iran, I couldn't get an exam really properly. Sometimes a scribe, but not the proper scribe. I mean, one of the teachers or one of the staffs could help me. I take the exam. It was really trouble. I can say about it. First of all, you must understand the blind. How a blind is, what is good for a blind, and what kind of a stuffs and facilities a blind could have to learn. There is not a specific example. I told, like braille, how can they should communicate with the blind? You must not say a blind, for example, you see the board and say that. But if he has low vision or partial sighted, that's okay. But you cannot say the blind look at something. If it's listening, you can say listen to something. Or if it's readable, you can say read that thing with your computer, with your screen reader, or your braille display, or stuff like that. You know, there is a cultural issue in the world about the blind people, and always they think they are the last resort. They're not last resort. You remember Helen Keller, who tried to learn writing, who tried to learn many things, but she went through everything and pushed to the limit, and she written so many books, and she's the greatest writer in the world. There is a cultural issue and should be resolved. It's not resolving right now in 2022, in 2023. Maybe resolved at 2130, but should resolve. Everything should improve. It should not look at us as a last resort or like an unusable thing, because we are not usable. We are capable to do everything. The human is not usable. It's not for using.